Good morning, everyone. Yay. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome back, everyone, after at least partially the holiday break. I know we still have this week leading up to New Year's Eve and the calendar year switching over to 2022, but it's nice to check in and maybe go over what this weekend was like for everyone. So welcome back, everyone, especially to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience, regardless of what platform you're finding yourself on and finding this content on. I really, really appreciate all of the interaction and the subscriptions and the likes and just being part of this process and this journey together. And if you're new here, welcome and thanks for stopping by. And it's so appreciated that you are taking an opportunity to at least check out what's going on here. And again, if you do find this content valuable, regardless of what platform you're on, when you subscribe and like and share and comment, it actually does make an impact on it being recommended to more people. So if you find it helpful and inspiring and have some guidance for you, there's a pretty good likelihood that other people will experience that as well. So again, thank you for being here and thank you for participating. So how is everyone doing after the Christmas weekend, if that is, in fact, what you celebrate? I think regardless of the celebration, what type of religious faction you fall under, or how you choose to really honor and revere this time of year, the changing of the seasons, if you are acknowledging the birth of Jesus, like whatever it is, I have a feeling that it was really intense, and also too that it was just really lovely for a lot of people. I think that it is certainly both experiences can happen at once, and depending on who you are and what's going on for you, you may have experienced one side more than the other. And our moon is in Libra right now, and yesterday was in Libra. There was our third quarter moon that was in a square to the sun. So that if you feel like you may be existing in two places at once, I feel like that is not only a reference to the third quarter moon that was squaring the sun yesterday, which we'll kind of go over a little bit. I talked a lot about it last week. I talked about it endlessly on all of the astrology forecast videos that are now posted. But just to kind of give ourselves a reminder here about kind of having one foot in the past, one foot in the future, and feeling very capable, or at the very least just experiencing, maybe being in two places at once, experiencing two different things at the same time. I mean, that's the thing about the moon in Libra, is this ability to transfigure ourselves for the need of the situation and the need of those we are in some sort of binding agreement or relationship with. And so Libra moon people tend to allow their emotions to shift and transfigure and reconstruct based on the needs of the collective situation. So you may find yourself kind of feeling that way. And we'll go over all the transits for today and tomorrow, because there will be no transmission tomorrow in the morning. So we'll kind of give ourselves, some time to really go over what's going on today, what to expect tomorrow. Of course, Jupiter is going to move into Pisces by the end of today, the end of tomorrow, and just a big sigh of relief, thankfully, when that happens. So how is everyone? I want to check in and see what's going on. So let us know in the comments how your weekend was, how your experience of the holiday was. It was definitely intense. I will validate that for everybody, and lots of stories coming across my personal awareness of either just very lovely, family filled, very joyous and merry type of experiences, other experiences where people may have had some really intense interactions in the family scene where things may have exploded. I mean, the Saturn and Uranus square that was exact on very early on the 24th was a big part of that. Also, Mars was in a trine to Chiron yesterday. That was a huge, or Saturday on Christmas Day with Venus in her retrograde meeting Pluto. I mean, just so much was happening over the weekend. So if you haven't checked out the astrology for that or your own sign, you can do that either, just scrolling back in any of the channels, except Odysee. I don't put the videos for the astrology forecast. I don't put those on Odysee because I just don't have any traction there. And so maybe if there's more viewership, I would put them on there. But if you're on BitChute or YouTube, you can just scroll down. You can find your sign, and even though the weekend is over, it's looking towards the new moon, right? Our new moon on the 2nd of January in Capricorn, and let it burn, baby. And I would say that today's transmission and the imagery and the title, which is very related actually to where Mercury is in its transit of Capricorn right now. We'll go over that, but that is an actual building that I've seen, by the way. That's my photography. And that was on, that was like a road trip, weekend trip to Vermont. And so out in the rural Vermont, and sometimes these things fall away and there's nobody there to do anything about them or to fix them or to have any impact on them. And sometimes it is when we come to this realization that there is really there's no going back, and there's certainly no fixing what has been broken down and just degrading for a long time. And so have been some intense eruptions, or certainly some very difficult truths that got spit out with Mars in conjunction with Antares this weekend, especially with Chiron involved. It's really just showing what has been on the path of degradation in some way, shape, or form for a long time. And it's now just coming to our awareness. Now that Chiron is direct, it's going to be so much more out in the open what's going on in terms of our own process, our own wounds, our victim mentality. And really, it's going to be unavoidable. It's coming out into it's coming out into our awareness. It's coming up to the surface now. But it's not new, and that's something to consider, that it has been falling apart for a very long time. And so transforming a setback or a seeming setback into an accomplishment can be very easily done through the realm of our mind with Mercury, especially today with where it is in Capricorn, is the ability to accept quote unquote defeat gracefully. And that's more about being able to learn from the situation. That is real power. That is real maturity. That is really being a boss, as all these things that Capricorn represents, is being able to learn from your failures, learn from your mistakes, and find a way to, again, find accomplishment in what seems like a setback. And so maybe it does seem like a setback if there was an eruption at Christmas dinner over political issues or social issues, but that's been something that's been brewing for a long time, and maybe it finally just came out into the open and now can be addressed for what it is. Maybe there was some project or some other type of event that you've been trying to initiate or do something about, or just take new steps in a different direction, and maybe again existing in two places at once. You still have to finish out what we have begun, right? You want to finish what you've started, but we're starting to be able to visualize where we're going next, at least internally, at least in our emotions, our intuition. And we had a big blast of the Schumann last night that I'm going to go over, and certainly we're getting a little bit of solar activity. I think it's gonna get pretty big again, just because there's some of the biggest sunspots that we've had in this entire cycle are now facing the Earth. So there is always the potential that this could ramp up. But Schumann was, we had a pretty big spike. We haven't had one in a while. Last night, so we'll go over that too, because sleep may have been difficult. You may have had some very potent and insightful dreams last night as well, and and allowing the opportunity for those of us who are operating now at a higher frequency or a higher oscillation of vibration to maybe align with something that is more familiar to us, right? And then as we go back down into, we just go back down into the fray, right? And so it's important that we have opportunities to be reminded about what we're here to do, and maybe we do need a little bit of tough love or a little bit of sting from the heart of the Scorpion. I told you that Mars was gonna spit truth by fire, and it was gonna hurt. And some people, it definitely has. And again, it's gonna seem like a setback, but if we can, from our own mental perspective and our own mental processes, if we can see it as an opportunity to learn and to accomplish something, I think we're doing just fine. So let's see. I'm gonna check in with the chat here. Emily keeps retracting her messages. It was intense at times and very calm and peaceful at others. Purposeful retreat, so basically introspective. Lots of opportunities to get real with myself. Excellent. I can't imagine it going any better than something like that. Yeah, intense at times, also very calm and peaceful. I like that. Lots of opportunities to get real with myself. I think that is a big, that's a big thing to be happening. Finishing what we started was certainly activated yesterday. Oh yeah, definitely with the third quarter moon. That's great input, because that was the crisis in consciousness between what we're expressing and what we're visualizing for the future. So that's important as well. So let me just clear out these bots here. Maybe now it's not letting me report anything. I'm getting real tired of YouTube, my friends. Real tired of it. Oh, there we go. I'm going to be making some moves into different platforms here soon. The Eye of the Scorpion manifested mostly in the vocal work that I did. That's very interesting. That's important. I think, Barb, sounds like you've been doing a lot of very conscious work and allowing it to come up and being ready for it, which I think is really great. So let's look at the Schumann, because I just want to bring some attention to it real quick here, and then we'll get into the reading for today, because it's actually, we have a lot to actually look forward to. And even though it may seem like we're losing a bit of, collectively here, losing maybe a bit of our security or our, containment or safety in some ways. And this is because Chiron is direct now, right? Our wounds are out on the surface. They're out there for us and everyone else to see. We're not really contained anymore into the safety of our garden. And Black Moon Lilith is in Cancer right now, speaking of safety and being protected. So I think that also is feeding into this. And we'll square the moon today in Libra. So we'll get into all of that, of course. But let's look at the Schumann real quick. Let me make sure that it's on. Yep, it is. So let's make sure that it's on. Here we go. So we're just gonna take a moment here to really just address this. So you can see here that there was a big spike early this morning, and it was roughly between, I'd say you can see here the activity was really between 2 and 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, make adjustments for where you are, but you can see that it topped out at about 27, which, like I said, it's we haven't had any really big spikes in a little while. So it was a lot of the agitation that has been happening, I think, since, especially since the first time that Venus and Pluto came together in their conjunction before she stationed retrograde, I think was way more solar activity and a lot of agitation because of the solar activity. But this is a different experience altogether. So I know for a fact, for me, about 3:30 in the morning, I was up and just awake and, having a lot of vivid dreams and those types of experiences. But also my cats were on me at 3:30 in the morning doing the pushy paws thing, right? Needing to, God, no pun intended, needing to, find some comfort and self-soothing. Cats are doing that in order to initiate that type of experience. And so my one cat is just on me doing the pushy paws at 3:30 in the morning, and I'm up and I'm damn, something's going on. So whatever it was pretty loud, I would say. And what I find really interesting, if we just take a moment here to just scroll down, so we see, a pretty consistent spike here, but this is really interesting. Let's scroll down just a little bit, is how the quality didn't even budge except for the red one, right? The red one dropped considerably. So some people report that, especially with the quality and the frequency, that the red line represents much more of the third density aspect. So if that is the case, then you can see how this dropped in quality considerably as the amplitude went up, which I think is interesting. Now, here's another thing that I've noticed that seems to be a little off base from what we usually see. So something is definitely happening that's different, because if you see, here's the 7 to 9 on the universal time, there is a drop in the frequency. You can see it right here in the top one. There's a drop down back to the Schumann as it normally is at this time. And again, the red line had much more of a drastic drop, but we don't see the same consistent dropping in the frequency as we have before when the amplitude goes up. And I think that that is really interesting. I have no idea why that is, and I'm not going to, I have some more research to do, I think, before I can really speak to why this may be the case, but it's a definite difference in what I have been observing up to this point in terms of, loud spikes in amplitude versus the drop in the pitch or the frequency. I mean, there is a drop, but it's usually much more drastic and usually more uniform, and it's not. So, that is an interesting thing, to have the amplitude to go up considerably and to not have the pitch correspond in a drop, which really, and the quality doesn't even change. I think that that's a good sign. All signs point to the fact that at this point something has shifted for the positive, and that's been the case, I would say, for the last week or so, and I think a lot of us have been feeling it. Now, again, what this is doing is making things much more visible on the surface when it comes to all of the stuff that is falling away or being destroyed, or, whatever Pluto's impact is. It's we're seeing the results of it much more on the surface now. It's not really hidden. And I think that this spike in the Schumann is a really powerful indication of this, that there isn't, like I said, the corresponding drop in frequency with the amplitude going up. Like, there's an actual steadiness to this. And like I said, if you look at the quality, it barely budged at all, which is very strange. I mean, if you see the spike in the Schumann on Christmas Day right here, then let me make sure you can see it. Yeah, right here, and you see how the amplitude went up, and you see how the quality changed pretty drastically at this point. And again, the corresponding drop in the frequency. Something is very different about what happened this morning, which it feels right. It feels good. It feels like something has shifted, and it certainly seems like many of us are now attuned. I think that's really what it represents. Like, we're attuned now to these higher oscillations, and so when it does get louder, there isn't as much of a need to adjust in other realms in order to keep everything stable. I think that we are now and with asteroid Ceres now in Taurus, right? Like in direct conjunction with the Pleiades, I do feel like that this is very indicative of, a much more of a resonance with the natural world, a resonance with where we are going to New Earth. Like, you can feel the shift. And there's a couple things that I'm sure are waking people up, like over the weekend with any number of interactions, and you can see that New York, they're about to shut New York down again. They're preparing for that. And, my brother had his tickets to the New Year's run for Fish. They play Madison Square Garden every New Year's for decades. They've played there, and New York forced them to cancel, and and the band wanted to. They wanted to postpone. They didn't want to cancel. They wanted to honor the tickets and do it later. And the city told them not. They won't be doing it till April. Even though the Knicks just played at the Garden like 2 days ago, they're going to shut down the entire New Year's Eve concert at Madison Square Garden. So, and you can see that they're preparing, and you can see it in the news too, like how they're just like, completely, just blasting everything about the danger and Omicron and blah, 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 right? It's all there. So they're already planning to shut down, and it's like it doesn't matter anymore. I think people are just like awake now, and as destructive potentially and disruptive and really difficult the weekend may have been for people, I think that it was an eye-opener to the fact that our society is like that, that barn in the middle of nowhere that's just been falling apart, and nobody's going to put the energy to do anything about it because it just needs to go, right? The structural integrity is gone. And we talked about that too with Saturn, right? That with the square with Uranus, like if you aren't giving any kind of, if you aren't able to allow some sort of flexibility or certainly just adaptability, that Uranus would cause some serious structural damage to what you consider your, the most stabilizing force. And it depends on where Saturn is in your chart that it may have the most impact. So crazy times, that is for sure. So but that Schumann resonance, that was a pretty big indication to me. Now, there are storms. The West Coast is getting pummeled. It's snowing here right now. And then you have record highs in the South, right? So I don't know what's going on that front. And I have some ideas that I probably won't share here because I'll keep getting more and more bots to come in on my stream. It did feel like an awakened weekend, just sensing it in the collective. Yes to more orientation in New Earth, less to engaging with rigged polemics. Yes, that's a great way to put it. People came together, and I think they realized a lot of things, and they realized, the value of their family and their loved ones, regardless of the choices they've made. Maybe people really woke up to what is happening, but you can tell that there has been kind of and as the result of like very, very intense astrological transits that really just, they so perfectly initiated and held the space for these types of situations. So yes to more orientation to New Earth, less to engaging. Now, something that we have to keep in mind is that we are going to have to still deal with the fact of that, rundown shack that is falling apart in our right in front of our faces. We're going to have to, there's no getting around that. And it's probably going to get even more so obvious. And if you've been living, not you, but anybody been living under the illusion that shack is actually, able to be fixed, or certainly isn't even falling apart, well, the next phase is going to be pretty brutal. And this is why the new moon is so important, to let it, the topic and the general feel is to let it burn, let it burn, understand the value of the fire as a cleansing, purifying force that also simultaneously represents rebirth. They're inseparable from each other in terms of what fire really represents. And so, once the calendar year flips over and we have that first new moon of 2022, which really is going to be an amazing opportunity to set real intentions for growth over not only the month, but the year, but you have to let it burn. And I think that's really going to be a struggle for, it just is, right? And this is why the moon in Libra is so important right this moment, and why it was even important with the third quarter square, right? Because our ability to straddle this whole process is, is so important, right? Because if we get entrenched in one place or the other, or we don't allow ourselves to be flexible, but also maintain our integrity, it's just going to, it's simultaneously going to be awful and amazing. And we have to be able to, and I say this very clearly, we do have to be able, as starseeds and light workers and wanderers and anybody that has identified themselves as being here for this time as a guide and a lighthouse, we're going to have to be able to live in both places at once. And this is what fire ultimately represents, being able to simultaneously accept the death and the destruction part of the fire, as well as the rebirth and purification part of the fire as well. So it's not easy work, but there has been some type of shift in the collective's understanding of what's happening. So yay to difficult astrology. We talked about this. That grand square with Jupiter and Leo on the nodal axis there was no getting around that. And for any, for the star seeds in particular, 26 to 27 degrees Leo is the Atlantean star seed position, right? And so that full moon, or that moon opposite Jupiter, was very close to that position. So many of the Atlantean dynamics that really need to be released into the collective now to understand what went wrong then. We're coming through people's emotions, through their feelings, through their dreams, through their all kinds of stuff. They are not winning. It's like when the Wicked Witch of the West, they are desperate and we are letting it burn. This witch says, I'm melting. Yes, totally. When I was a kid, this is a total aside, but I think you guys will appreciate it. When I was like third grade, we did a little play of my classroom did a little play of The Wizard of Oz. And everybody auditioned for their roles except me. I was just given the role of the Wicked Witch of the West. I didn't even have to audition for it, and nobody else was allowed to. They just gave it to me. So if that doesn't tell you something about, my Draco, my Draco aspect sitting on the surface. And in that version, of course, we were all like, third grade. So in that version of it, she at the last minute, like turns to the light, basically, which was really cool for me to be able to play that role as well. Weather here isn't just hot, but also super foggy. Haven't seen the sky in 5 days. Suspicious activity for sure. I would agree with that. It is like, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. Let it burn, right? Let that shack out in the middle of nowhere, just let it go. It's fine. We haven't used it, right? But there might be some nostalgia. And I think that people with that level of nostalgia are going to be the ones that struggle the most. Anyway, let's get into the reading. We have so much to cover right now, especially because there'll be no transmission tomorrow. Okay, guys, so let's see here. Oops. I hate when that happens. I flip the... There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Let's get to the reading. Yes, they are definitely not winning. That's for darn sure. The tipping point has already been reached. And, the hubris of trying to do anything about it is pretty comical to me. Speaking of winning and not winning, here is, let's start with our reading right now. Here is our causal factor, the victory, Jupiter in Leo. Speaking of which, now Jupiter is about to move into Pisces. It was in Aquarius as part of that grand square opposite the moon. So something about that opposition brought really this forward, right? Because it was in the opposition of the moon and Jupiter in these very critical degrees of the last degree of each of the sign that they're in, Leo and Aquarius, that we... and the nodal axis of where we are currently, the moon's nodal axis, this I think really came to the surface as a result of it, almost literally, right? The unsealed letter of the last degree of Leo it can't be hidden. It can't be suppressed anymore. It's not meant to be a secret. It has to be shared. It can't be contained any longer. And so part of this is the victory of realization of those things, of where we've been and how it's different this time. So here's the victory. Jupiter in Leo. Let's see here. Let me get my notes out. So the flames of the fire appear like floating pure gold. Isn't that a nice little reference here? And you can see them all here, like equally coming out of the crux point of all the cross points where these wands are crossing each other. And so they all have, this looks like a flower, and then there is some sort of animal with a beak and ears. I'm not entirely even sure what that is, but then you have the snake and you have the feather, the plumed serpent, basically, on the head of these two as well, with the sun in the middle. So I always think of Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl when I see this type of imagery as well, but it really does show that we have triumphed in some way, a victory that has allowed us to grow and develop. And so success, satisfaction, creative fulfillment, right? And when we're talking about Leo, we're talking about the individual's sovereignty and authenticity shining forward. So this is our causal factor. So even if it was struggle over the weekend, depending on what you experience, we are finding ourselves coming out of something very, a lot of strife, right? That Five of Wands would be strife, coming out of it with satisfaction, success, and triumph. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is part of today specifically. And as we look at the whole thing, you'll see that the other side of it, the Six of Swords, which is here, is referenced by Mercury in Aquarius, which will be happening very soon. So I see this as much larger of a snapshot of what's going on energetically, as opposed to this is exactly what's happening today. Although it is happening today, it's happening outside of time and space, because that's how this work operates. But it is a snapshot of the collective's energetic template right now. And there is a sense of we've made it through a lot of struggle and strife, and we've come out of it victorious at some level, right? And finding meaning. Jupiter is about meaning and wisdom in a lot of ways, and of course the guidance of the collective value system, the belief, the paradigms that we're operating under, and each of us feeling fulfillment and success as a result of it. So this is a very nice thing to start out with, is victory. Now, when we get to the present, or the heart of the moment, here's our Queen of Discs again. She just came up last week too. And so there is a sense of responsibility. Here is our Venus in Capricorn. And even though she's a retrograde right now and she's just past Pluto again, I think was a lot deeper, a lot more introspective, perhaps much more internalized in terms of what we are offering up to Pluto. And the cats are just insane right now. We're still at a point, I think, at the heart of it, where we want to provide and protect those that we are responsible for, that we care about, right? The Queen of Discs is stable and reliable as the earth that the discs represent, but also is very conforming and emotional and compassionate, like the water that the Queen represents. So there's instincts and intuition. There's caring for people's emotional well-being. There's calm and practicality, and there's a strong responsibility here for protecting the home, the family, and in a very material way, right? I mean, there's a lot of materialism that's put into this card here, with an obvious reference to Capricorn with the mountain goat. She has the globe with this geometry, the sacred geometry throughout the whole sphere. Her staff as well with the crystal on top. And look at these. I mean, her antennae are just massive. And there's this interesting kind of throne thing that she's sitting on that kind of, creates some sort of canopy a little bit, but then you look out over the vast space that this person, this queen, is responsible for. And that's what she's looking at. She's looking at it situated at the top, looking out over everything that this that she's responsible for. And that's where her focus really is turned towards that. And so we still have this sense of, I think we are still embodying this move from Sagittarius to Capricorn, which is what this card really represents. Now, we still have Mars in Sagittarius, so and still in conjunction with Antares today. So this is a strong resonance still. Spit and fire. But we are also way more into the Capricornian aspect now with Venus, with Pluto, with Mercury, with Juno, asteroid Juno, right? She was the wife of Zeus. And she's in a very interesting position today, too, because she's in conjunction with fixed star Vega. So we got a strong Lyran component right now that continues to be present. So Lyran starseeds, or anybody that identifies or resonates with the Lyran signature, I mean, it's providing so much ambition to get something done, and fearlessness, and a sense of really valuing and almost enjoying the material experience, because there's no fear of security here. So, and again, this person here is not concerned about her own security because she's pretty stable in it. Her job here is to take care of those that she is responsible for and that identify her as a leader and as a mother. So I think at the center here, we are, even with the victory, we collectively, and the identity that I think that we are embodying is still like very compassionate and emotional and caring, but also very responsible. So Venus and Capricorn all day. And now that she's retrograde, I think that we're really considering it a lot more than perhaps than when she was in her direct motion. Meeting Pluto has been eye-opening, to say the least. Now, here's our, I rearranged my entire office, and the lighting is still a little off now that I've moved my prayer mat, my altar, to the east facing, now that we have reached the solstice point and the sun is returning. So I've moved my focus of my prayer mat and my altar to face the east, but the lighting isn't great in terms of the photography. So I'm still working on that. But so we do have at the base here, right, where we're rooted, this is the fated meeting. Number 7, right? We know that number 7 is a moment of adjustment. This is, it's exactly what it says, that these are the times we're in now, literally, right? There's a big clock with at midnight or noon, however you want to look at it, that it's all predetermined to a certain extent. And fate is nothing more than a cause and effect relationship. And that may be something that is beyond just this lifetime, that the cause and effect. And I would argue that that is the case, that we are here at this predetermined time to experience these karmic relationships and these situations because we have come back exclusively for this reason. And so to also trust the timing and to be very committed and aware of keeping our growth as a priority when we come into awareness of these karmic meetings. So it could be a person, it could be a group of people, it could be a job or a project, or it could just be collectively that we are reaching this moment that has been predetermined based on our previous actions that are part of this karmic course. And it's really important that we honor it. You know, the tendency is to get caught up in the relationship itself rather than to see it as a bigger karmic picture. But this is where we can really draw our power from right now in terms of energetics, right? Is that this is all about the timing, right? And the only timing is divine timing. And so it's easy to get kind of off center here when we don't accept that this is such a larger process unfolding. But this is important that we really root ourselves here, I think. And maybe there are things we don't see yet, and the timing isn't right for these aspects to come in. So it's important that we trust that. But look at this. This is where our conscious attention is, where our power can be released, right? How we can contribute this power. Archangel Michael, I mean, this is the channel of divine power, right? And really lifts our courage. So it's important that we trust our convictions, we trust our power, our resourcefulness, and to be open to allow this courage to be channeled right into us, right? To be aware of it, to accept it, and to know that it's here for us, and to also, again, release ourselves in some ways through this channel. And you can see he's got a flaming heart, and Michael is able to lift the children, right? Lift up those who are not able to lift themselves right now as a function of their natural development, right? And this is something that we can do for others around us, right? This is, again, this is all part of the divine plan, which the fated meeting I think really does represent. And we do want to take care and have compassion, and we want to protect those that we are responsible for. And this earth is something that we are responsible for. Each other is something we are responsible for. What we contribute to building as a society is something we are all responsible for. And Venus in Capricorn has made that very clear at this point. And so we can take all of this and release into this very powerful channel of divine courage and lift people up. And the aspect of the child is important, because with Chiron direct now, these inner child wounds are just seeping out into everybody's like external life. So it may be people that you know, it may be your own inner child that needs to be acknowledged and cared for in a certain way. But there's so much access to this power right now, because look at this effect. I mean, the Six of Swords is science, right? And this is not necessarily like trust the science, because science is a methodology, but this is what this represents. Mercury in Aquarius. This is a place where Mercury wants to be. It's in an air sign. And so the mind can unfold all of its energies in a place like this. So search for truth and research. And it feels like we've done so many of those things. But with Mercury coming into Aquarius, we are going to go back into that realm. And so this also, because it's a 6, there's success after anxiety, after trouble, after a sense of defeat, right? The 5 of Swords is Venus in Aquarius. It's defeat, right? So now we come out of it where the mind can unfold all of its potential. So looking forward to Mercury coming into Aquarius. And this is where it will retrograde, is in Aquarius. Actually, where Saturn is right now, it's going to retrograde. So what is being very strongly anchored right now in terms of the collective energy that Aquarius represents. Mercury is going to come by, eventually meet this point. We're going to have this opportunity to mentally engage this, and then it's going to go retrograde. So we're going to have a decent amount of time with Mercury in Aquarius to really actually let our mental energies unfurl in a way that's actually going to be balanced and be a real search for truth now, and not all of this, look at all this chaos that's surrounding it, all these ideas, all of these influencers, all of these avenues of information that are just coming at us all the time to try to influence us and manipulate us and keep us out of this right here, the circle, right? And the cross in the middle, right? And you can even see that the geometry in this sphere is also very balanced as well. So this is really favorable in terms of where we're going, and our mental ability to truly be able to research and search for truth in a very mentally supported way. I think I really am digging this reading today. And I think a lot of this has to do with where the Schumann was and what happened last night. That was a big blast that again, it depends on where you're at. Some people had terrible dreams and are really struggling right now with what's going on in their life or their family. And other people were like, damn, that was awesome. I got huge downloads. So very interesting indeed. So when we look at our guidance, first of all, the fated meeting. It's really important. Again, I brought up the children. When the Five of Roses, it's reversed, right? So the garden is this beautiful natural setting that protects these two aspects of our inner child, the exploring and outward. The little boy here has the slingshot and she has her magnifying glass looking at a butterfly. So you have exploration outward and discovery in a more micro type of way, but they're contained and they're protected and it's innocent, right? When it's reversed, there's a lot of ways this can be looked at, but I have a feeling here that we have to exercise some patience and compassion, just like the Queen of Discs would do, for our inner child or people who are their inner child is having a difficulty feeling safe. We may feel unsafe at that level. We may feel like we're getting dumped right out of our garden, or maybe the gate got left unlocked and we are susceptible to influence. Or maybe we're just growing up and moving out of the safety of the garden. However you want to look at it, it does seem pretty clear that even though there's a fated meeting that we are engaged in and divine timing is the only timing, there is something here that is reminding us to that we are safe even if we don't feel safe. And that's what the zebra really represents. It's saying let go of your fear, know that you're safe and protected at all times. And I know when your inner child is feeling, or a child in general, if they're feeling that they're not safe and they're feeling fearful and their mechanism for protection has gone out the window, this can be very destabilizing. Now, the zebra is naturally endowed with the means to protect itself, right? Because of the stripes. It's able to blend in to the tall grasses in where it lives in order to be rendered invisible, right? And there's so much of that seems to be coming up, and it will, when Jupiter comes into Pisces, it's something that's going to come up again. Like you may find yourself fearful about moving ahead or exiting the safe space of the garden, or exiting where your inner child has felt safe. Whenever we're going into unfamiliar territory or new territory, it's natural to feel scared. There's nothing wrong with that. But remember, your body, your gut will provide the information when there's actual danger, like when there's actual real life danger that you have to spring into action, fight, flight, or freeze is activated. But otherwise, an exaggerated sense of fear is manufactured. Oh boy, is it ever. I mean, if we've learned nothing from the last 2 years, is how easily this can be brought about. And so even when these vulnerable and young parts of ourselves, that inner child, is feeling this, right? And we're moving into unfamiliar territory because we're leaving the garden, right? We're leaving our safe space in some ways. We may find ourselves being fearful, but to trust that we have everything we need to remain safe. And it's about trusting our bodies and trusting our gut. And to, again, remind ourselves that exaggerated sense of fear is likely manufactured. And so you got to pay attention to what's going on literally right in front of you and in your, in what you can do something about. Not to say you should put your head in the sand about what's happening on a global level, but remember, again, manufactured fear. Now, when it comes to where we are releasing this energy, number one, here's the ladybug, and it's, time of good fortune and abundance. Again, Jupiter coming into Pisces. Whew. I mean, Jupiter is the planet of good fortune, right? And so coming into Pisces, again, just infinite space in which to expand, infinite understanding and resources. That's what Jupiter is going to be so happy about when it moves into Pisces. But the thing about the ladybug specifically is that gratitude is the key to receiving this good fortune. And when in Pisces, this is about the experience of compassion, unconditional love, the experience of being fully immersed in oneness with everything else. So gratitude is the key here, right? So you align with the feeling of being in abundance, for instance, right? And then you release the attachment to the outcome. It's about the feeling, a natural extension of this practice. If you see, if you actually practice it and you're not attached to the outcome, right? You have to release the attachment to getting what you want or outcome. And when you do that and you're still aligned with the feeling of abundance, gratitude is just a natural process after that. You naturally will feel the gratitude of your blessings when you are in alignment with the feeling of abundance. So you have to be open and to receive if you want to actually receive. And when it's coming to Archangel Michael, and this is about power. This is about real power. And the King of Forces, here we are, right? The real power that comes from our connection to the natural world. So we're exerting a very calm influence as this individual, but we also have incredible power that is the result of being tapped into natural forces. So if we are aligned with this identity here, and we are taking the ladybug as our guidance from the animal kingdom right now. We're so set up in this way to receive this channel of divine, or to be a channel of divine power. But we have to be open to it, and we have to actually be connected to the natural world. Like, we have to acknowledge and practice our power coming from this place, as opposed to any external feature that is ultimately being torn down, right? If our power is coming from a structure that looks like the thumbnail image, then we're not going to be able to, number one, align with abundance unless we see it that way. And we certainly are going to close off access to this incredible courage and conviction that Archangel Michael represents. So it's very favorable. Something very important just shifted over the weekend as a result, I think, of these very powerful transits, like kind of getting everybody where they needed to be, sometimes very drastically and very painfully. But here is our guidance, right? If we're, again, tapped into the forces of nature, if our power is coming from source, right? Great Spirit, the natural world, and we are open to the abundance as if it already exists, boy, we're going to have access to courage and power that maybe we haven't even been able to access up until now. And it's, like I said, it's really going to assist, I think, ultimately in our minds when it gets to Aquarius, like really actually searching for truth and research and having a very balanced perspective in our mind. So pretty remarkable when it comes to readings. They've been pretty dire up until recently, and I think that's just because I don't think that humanity was quite there yet. That's just my take on it. So we're gonna look at the astrology here. Yeah, see, what a huge shift in this reading. I love it too. It is huge. It's very and it's very obvious, right? It's very, very obvious. So let's see here. I'm going to get into the astrology, guys. All right, here we go. Ta-ta. Oops. I'm going to make this a little smaller. There we go. All right, friends, here we go. And then we will, we'll look at tomorrow's too, because I won't be doing a transmission tomorrow. I gotta go pick up the mister from the airport that is far, far away from here. And, we'll just stay overnight. And it's dumping snow right now here, but in Pittsburgh, which is about 3 to 4 hour drive away, it's just raining. So I don't know, whatever. I don't understand it, but I'm just going to roll with it. So the moon is in Libra, and I just talked about that, right? We are likely feeling this transfiguration happening, pretty consistently within our feelings. And, if you are not tapped into a sense of integrity, if you can't find the fulcrum in the scales itself, then this can feel very just like wishy-washy and be like, I don't know how I feel. I'll just feel whatever is actually going to make everybody else feel better in this moment. And I'm sure many people are going to have that experience if they are not, working consciously, or if they haven't come to a moment of just like, oh, I see what's happening. So, and some people have done that, right? I know people that have either reported to me, or I know them that ended up doing things like taking, this is one that I'm sure this is common. I'm sure this is not I'm sure this is common. Is somebody reported to me very recently that they just found out that one of their children, who's an adult, but one of their children had not only taken got the medical intervention that is being, really strongly pumped out, but then didn't say anything to this person about it, and finally came clean about it because somebody else blew the whistle on them, right? And this person was devastated because it was held from them, right? They didn't tell them, and there was a reason why they didn't tell their parent about it, even though it's technically, as an adult child, it's really none of their business, or they don't have any in my opinion, don't have any responsibility to disclose that information to anybody. But then they found out about it because everybody else knew. And then it was just this whole thing. And I'm sure that many people have done this and have not told other people in their life because they don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to cause any problems, and they certainly don't want the confrontation. So this is the downside to the Libra, especially a moon in Libra experience, is the doing whatever it takes to avoid the confrontation and to keep everybody happy and balanced. And so you may find that is unfolding as well, but I think it's getting a lot harder for that to happen. So the first thing that really challenges this actually is the fact that the moon, speaking of Chiron, that right this morning, right around the time, oh, look at that, right around the time that the Schumann resonance was doing that huge spike, the moon is opposite Chiron. Now the Chiron is direct. And always with oppositions, always you want to find the fulcrum. You want to find the balance point to, maximize the amount of potential energy that's in an opposition, right? These are either a seesaw, or you can think of it as two people like at a tug of war. And if you are pulling with equal amount of force on either side, you have an incredible amount of potential energy that's built that will turn into kinetic energy if one side lets go or the other side pulls harder or something. But it's important to find the fulcrum. This is the balance point. And so we know where Chiron is. We've taught, it's been in the same place and now it's direct. It's been in the same degree now for quite a while, which is, being able to gaze into the crystal, so to speak, and keep your focus and attention very concentrated on the picture of who you can be and you want to be, as opposed to all of the Chiron wounds of coming in and pulling us all off of our focus, right? Now, the moon in Libra, in an opposition to this, is actually, I think, really, the fact that it so coincides with the blast and the Schumann even reinforces to me even more that this was a moment where we were able to access through our intuition, through our subconscious and our dream state, the capacity for embracing something that's more universal within our own personal experience. So there's chaos, right? There's a chaos brewing, and there has been. Society is chaotic right now with what's going on in so many different ways. And this moment of this opposition was showing us something that we can return to source, or to a sense of balance during something that is a very confused search for new values, right? We know that it's dying on the one hand. We're looking for new earth on the other hand, and what that actually, because it's so different than anything we've ever experienced. How do we even wrap our heads around it? Well, whatever came about from that Schumann blast and the moon in Libra in opposition to Chiron was like this moment of giving us the capacity in our own intuitive and subconscious realm to embrace something universal within our own personal experience. And I think this really also speaks strongly to the fated meeting at the core of our energetics right now and our energetic axis, that it's all about divine timing, and the fact that this is a much larger process that we have agreed upon as a result of our previous actions in early life or in other lifetimes, maybe at a multidimensional level. But this has allowed us to actually find some balance while Chiron is impacting those inner child wounds and the shame and guilt that Chiron represents. So this is very important. Right after this, then the moon came into a sextile and created a yod, basically, with Uranus. And I talked about this a little bit last week, but this sextile right here, a yod is a finger of God. So you have 2 points that are in a sextile, and then each of them have a quincunx to where the finger of God is pointing, right? So first, we'll look at the sextile here with the moon and Mars still in conjunction with Antares, by the way. Sextile is about the importance of being calm and poised and going through a very rapid and disruptive period emotionally, especially with the moon. Coming out the other side. It's like if you've ever been rafting or done any kind of canoeing, but you've been in white water, it's like you go through the rapids and then you come out to the clear and calm waters again. And it's important that we realize that this represents the self-control and the poise necessary to reach inner stability. And so while Mars is spitting fire all over the place, and especially with Chiron 2 days ago on Christmas Day, this is an opportunity to invest this calm approach after going through all of that like really erratic, turbulent water. And now we can apply this and invest this into Mars is still here, it's still spitting fire right at Antares, but now we can kind of give ourselves some mental clarity by finding the calm waters within our own self, right? And then when this sextile is a yod or finger of God, because each of these are in quincunx to Uranus, and Mars will be exact by the end of tomorrow. And, you just got to go forward a little bit for the quincunx with the moon to be exact. But before that happens, by the way, we're going to see the moon then come into, let's see here. The moon, you don't see it here, but Black Moon Lilith is down here in Cancer. You don't see it on this chart. So that is a square, right? Because Cancer is cardinal water, Libra is cardinal air. So the moon at 10 to 11 degrees of Libra, which is really dealing with the bottleneck that is inherent in the transmission of accumulation of knowledge on one hand, which is the one side of the Libra scale, and the transmission or teaching of all of that accumulated knowledge to perhaps a generation that is different and is interested in things differently. So there is a bottleneck that this particular degree represents. That's a difficulty about how do I take everything I've accumulated and then put it over into the other side when the other side doesn't even identify with the same cultural setup anymore. It's like an old professor trying to teach like the freshman year of students that are completely, they don't even read books anymore, right? They just are completely focused on their devices and, Snapchats and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to be like a boomer, because I'm not, but it does represent how generationally and culturally too, there is this bottleneck here. But the square to Black Moon Lilith, right? So we're feeling like, okay, how do I actually transmit from one side to the other? Everything that I've accumulated so far in my own journey and my own soul searching, and even in my own feelings, how do I actually communicate this to people, or the people that I care about, or somebody that is actively looking for any kind of guidance or information? Well, square to Black Moon Lilith in Cancer right now is, it's kind of a dark humor, right? It's a dark humor that she's representing, and Lilith will be heard no matter what. And so it's either becoming aware and willing to not suppress these parts of ourselves that are primal and deep and will demand to be heard and will come to the surface regardless. It's about being aware and not pushing it away out of stigma. That's Black Moon Lilith oftentimes is relegated to that type of identification. It's very there's a lot of stigma attached to what she represents, because she, pushed off from what was expected of her, apparently, and was just like, nah, this is what I'm doing, and nobody's going to tell me nothing, right? And so it's very, very powerful where Lilith is. And remember, Black Moon Lilith is not an object, it's a position. So it's actually in square to the moon itself, and it's a dark humor. It's a dark humor, and Lilith is also retrograde right now. So it's about, humor is important to decondition and to, make sure that our objective mind is independent, right? To develop objectivity, independence of mind, and it's very deconditioning. This is why, they have roasts of famous people and celebrities, because comedy in general is actually an incredible art form that is so socially necessary for a society to be able to see themselves objectively, without all of the baggage attached to it. This is where the laughter comes in. But there's something about this dark humor in square to the moon, right? That we have to kind of not take ourselves so seriously in this moment. And the square is just going to be like, it's just going to be, this has already happened, right? And maybe it's just, Lilith is already retrograde. So it's important not to continue to suppress what already might have a hard time, like making itself known clearly, or there may be more stigma attached to this dark humor. And while we're feeling like kind of like we have to be fair and balanced and like really just communicate to people what's going on. And this Lilith is like, all right, well, I'm going to be over here like talking shit, and not like in a nasty way, just clowning the whole thing. And I think that square, it was just a moment, right? It was just a moment with the moon, to maybe like take us so we can maybe not be so serious and not take ourselves so seriously, or not take the whole situation so seriously. And that maybe one of the best deconditioning things we can do is to like clown the whole thing. And that may feel a little weird, as we're like really, very legitimately and innocently in some ways, just being like, oh, how do I do this? And it's like, why don't you just tell a joke? That'll probably do it. So just an idea, just the way that I'm reading it. So Lilith there, and then the moon comes into the quincunx with Uranus, right? Right here, the quincunx with Uranus, 12 degrees Libra, and at the very same time is in a trine to Saturn as well, in the same degrees. And this degree of Libra is about going down into the deep and coming back out. There's an extraction that is part of this degree, and there's a need to keep going down and to in a quest, right? To gather more knowledge, to understand what's going on at the deeper levels, but you can't stay down there, right? You have to come back up for air. And this is where the moon is. And in a trine to Saturn, of course, this is an air trine. This is, we can go down there, and it's important that we emotionally take the plunge in some ways so that we can see and bring back out the underlying aspects of power and fuel, right? I mean, if you're mining, you're going down and mining for precious metals, and minerals and coal and all those types of things. In a trine to Saturn, who is very staunchly setting the foot down about the fact that we are all on the escalator to drop into this black hole, and everybody's on a different step, and that means different things, and that's just the way that it is. That's how Saturn operates. It's just what it is, right? You know, take it or leave it. This is what it is. And so I think that it actually, because it's a trine, right, you don't have to really do much about it, and it doesn't cause a lot of friction. So in some ways, it kind of allows us each individually and emotionally to kind of plumb the depths a little bit and bring it back up, because the full authority about it is that we're still all going. You know what I mean? And we don't have to stay down there either. That's the other thing. I mean, you don't want to get asphyxiated down underneath the surface, right? You want to bring it back up. And I think that if we really rely on Saturn as kind of like a backbone in this situation, or a scaffolding, then we don't have to stay down there. We can bring it back up, and maybe that will allow for some people to see something that'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go up the escalator into this step, or whatever, right? But it's about the mind too, because we are talking about a trine, an air trine. So different ways of being expressed, right? The moon is about how we feel, and Saturn is absolutely about power and authority. So these two coming together in this air trine, giving our, the mental sphere the ability to maybe not be totally asphyxiated, but bring more up to the surface, and realize that it's not going to actually change anything about where we're going collectively, but it will allow us to maybe get a breath of fresh air, and also offer something that's very valuable to the collective as well. That's and then when we move forward here throughout the day, we're going to find that both Pallas Athena in Pisces and Juno in Capricorn, they're not on this chart, but they're both at 16 degrees respectively. And so 15 to 16. So the moon is going to square Juno in Capricorn, and is going to come into a quincunx with Pallas in Pisces. So both positions that are either creating friction, causing a need to adjust ourselves in the moment. Certainly not an easy connection to either of these goddess asteroids, but where the moon is in particular is about, the boat landing that needs to be reconstructed, right? It's one thing to go out to sea, but then the storm of the mind or the storm of the psyche comes in and destroys the boat launch, and we're either lost or we're either lost or we come back in and we're so shell-shocked by the experience that we don't ever want to go back, right? Both of those are very real potentials for what's going on right now. So again, it's square to Juno, which is in conjunction with Vega right now. So she is definitely, in terms of the balance, speaking of balance, right? She's the agent of that balance of the scales, right? Venus is the ruler of Libra, and she is holding the scales. Her sensitivity to the world allows her to actually feel balance. She doesn't use her eyes. That's why Justice is blind. She feels it in her sensitivity to the world. But Juno she's the boss, and especially in Capricorn, she's really kind of a boss right now. And she is holding the balance at this sense of, 16 degrees of Capricorn is the, let's just look at it. 15 to 16 degrees. Like I said, Vega. This is about the importance that we are able to stay healthy as a collective. It's kind of an interesting Sabian symbol. It's the idea, it's all these little kids in their gym clothes, right? And I don't know if anybody used to do this. I mean, I'm kind of aging myself, and I don't know if I'm sure it still happens like in public school and stuff, but you remember like the end of the year, you had field day and you went out and you had all these activities, all these like outdoor sports and game activities. That's what it reminds me of, and how important it is that we are balancing like our responsibilities with exercise and maintaining our physical, our physical strength and power, and how important that is to the health and integrity of all of us, right? If we're not working together, then and exercising, finding physical activity in some way. And again, the Lyran starseeds are perfect for this. They love this shit. And I should say we, because I have this too. Using your body. They love it. Athletes, people that are really into like physical labor, like farming. I love that kind of stuff. Landscaping, I love that. I do that stuff now. I used to do it professionally, but now I do it because I'm like, I just want to move my body. I like to do this kind of manual work, and Lyran starseeds love that. There's a balance that Juno is holding around this, and the square to a moon in Libra that's talking about reconstructing the link, right? Reconstructing the link between the unconscious, right? The ocean, which is Pisces ultimately, and our own ego consciousness. That, this degree is expressing how important it is to do this. But the square to Juno is like, you got to actually get in your body. We have to be healthy, right? We have to be healthy enough to handle going out to sea, right? And she's providing this balance point, right? It will adjust with Juno if something is out of balance. And we can't keep thinking necessarily, we can't exclusively think about like, okay, I got to repair this boat launch or whatever. If you don't even have the, the stamina physically to take the boat back out, if that makes sense. It's important that the boat launch is repaired and reconstructed. We don't want to, we want that link there, but the square to Juno is a pretty clear, like, well, that link means nothing if you don't have the stamina to actually handle yourself out in the social world, right? And that Capricorn ultimately represents that. And so Juno is going to be like, you will be balanced, right? And maybe it's time to take some responsibility about our actual like physical health and wellness in order to be in a healthy collective. It's not just about the mind, although that, it's a lot about it, but, the nodal axis of the moon is going to shift into full experience from the mind. Gemini and Sagittarius, the mind and understanding. Taurus and Scorpio, all in the feels, especially Taurus. It's going to be all in the natural feels. So it's important that we're taking the time for our physical nature to be healthy and maintained. Now, it's also in a quincunx to Pallas Athena in Pisces too, which is a strategy that we are being invited to employ right now that has to do with finding some solitude and some quiet in order to get inspired, right? And to rely upon our own inner source of inspiration. Now, this is a quincunx, right? Between Libra and Pisces. So there is something that needs to be adjusted in the face of these two meeting each other, that they don't fit together, because this is about going into the inner source for inspiration, whereas Libra is still very much about the application of our knowledge of self to a balanced social perspective, a balanced relationship. And this, again, it has to do, there's so much subtext here. This has to do with, this moon has to do, again, like what I said, with the link between our own self and out into the unconscious. And we want to make sure that bridge or that boat ramp or whatever is still there. But Pallas Athena is like, maybe going out and getting lost at sea is not a terrible idea. It might actually be a good strategy, because it's really in the 12th house, which is the Pisces house, the isolation that people really come to find themselves and be truly inspired. This is, why people leave it all behind and go out into, asceticism, into the woods or into nature, right? And go live in a cave for the rest of their life. Or if people, I was going to say enter like a monastery or a convent, but that's still very much a Capricorn type of experience, because it's a structure that is created and maintained for a social good. Pisces is about the full immersion in the experience. So the isolation, hospitalization, going to prison, going to the ashram, right? Those types of things allow for the individual consciousness to have fully return back to source. And this is Pallas Athena's like, hey, if you're the quiet in your and the solitude of just going out to sea may actually be a good strategy. And while we are all kind of like trying to maintain some link between that and our minds so that we don't get lost, and I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't. The quincunx is the opportunity to transmute. Like, we don't want to lose the boat launch, right? We'll eventually want to come back. But Pallas Athena is like, yeah, just stay out there just for a little while longer, right? Just a little while longer. This is where you learn to gather inspiration from your own inner source as well. So that's the moon transits for today, and the major transits. So let's see, with Mercury, I just want to point out again, Mercury at 20 by the end of today, it'll be at 22 to 23 degrees. But even right now, 21 to 22 degrees, by accepting defeat gracefully, a general reveals nobility of character. And this is where I get the title about transforming setback into accomplishment. It's all going to come right now, today, through the realm of the mind. And this represents an uncompromising loyalty to the long game, right? The long game, and the long range ends, right? It's not necessarily about what is going to influence us right in this moment to feel better, but we're looking at the big picture, and that we can grow through a certain amount of defeat as well as through success. And most of the time you grow even more through your failure. And anybody who is successful in the realm of like business and large institutions and organizations, they will tell you that it's through their own failure that they've become successful, as opposed to doing everything well. So Mercury is really allowing for us today to use our minds to find the accomplishment in something that on the surface seems like a setback. So when we move to tomorrow, the moon's going to move into Scorpio. Ouch. But it also is going to come into a trine with Jupiter right before it slips into Pisces and before the moon slips into Scorpio. So let's take a look at that real quick. So I'm going to pop over to the chat. Confrontation was much easier this weekend. Funny enough, it led to better understanding for both sides. Yeah, see, that is the best case scenario, honestly. Unrelated, but I report your bots, then I see them as well. Higher ups be like, it's working. What exactly? YouTube higher ups be like, it's working. You know what? I did not discover this. Seth actually did some research, and he told me that YouTube has, and we'll get back to the astrology, I promise. YouTube is so passive aggressive with their algorithm. And he told me that what he discovered in his research recently is that if the ratio of views to the length of your content is not very good, they will suppress you in the algorithm just for that, because they don't want to waste resources hosting your content on their servers if you're not, especially long content. So, the fact that I'm transmitting every day and there is a very small and condensed viewership, they squash this content through the algorithm as a means to discourage people from continuing to do their work so that they don't have to host your content on their servers. Isn't that the most passive aggressive? I'm making moves, guys. So just be aware that these streams might move to Twitch, because their entire model for a platform is for streaming. So, and you can subscribe right to anybody's. You can subscribe to people's channels directly through Twitch. They are focused on streaming in particular, and perhaps they have the same algorithm. I don't know, but I just thought that was really interesting how they discourage people so passive aggressively. Anyway, I'm glad the confrontation was much easier this weekend. I feel like that if people, and that's the thing about the astrology, like if you know what's coming, if you can speak the archetypal and symbolic language, and really think deeply about it and consider it, then you are in a position to actually be in resonance with what's happening, even when it's difficult. And look at that. I mean, what Alex K said, it led to better understanding for both sides because of the confrontation. I mean, that is like your best case scenario, turning your setback into an accomplishment. And if people thought about things like confrontation more like an opportunity, man, we would get so much further in our own relationships, our own growth, and then as a society. But, you know, of course, it's the shadow of everybody that has been very intentionally hacked by our own our own military, essentially, and our own government and the corporate interests that run YouTube, for instance. So let's see if I get dinged for that. Anyway, so when we come into tomorrow, which is the 28th, so I'm going to exit out of some things here. Yes, you can save that. Save. Okay. Here we go. Speaking of a woman entering a convent, that is definitely the degree where Mercury will be, 23 to 24 degrees. The power of a true inner vision, right to our mind and our mental faculties. That'll be very interesting. So let's look at it. So the moon will first, right as the day churns over, we're going to find another quincunx to a Pisces energy, which is the Neptune in Pisces. So this is always an interesting quincunx at this particular degree, because the degree where Libra is, or the moon is in Libra, is about everybody going to the beach, right? It's a crowd, like a Sunday crowd at the beach. Everybody's going to the beach to be revitalized and refreshed by the mother force of the ocean, or the Pisces archetype, which is representative full immersion and experience into oneness, right? So when you go to the ocean, it usually tends to be, for the most part, very clarifying and allows for a full, fully just kind of relax into the natural rhythm of the ocean, the power of it, what it represents. And so when it's in quincunx to Neptune in Pisces, right? Poseidon in his own kingdom of Pisces, to have the quincunx here is very interesting, because we may feel how important this is, right? For everybody to approach the ocean and to get what they need to find inner balance and peace, right? Libra, and everybody equally going to this place on their own accord, but it represents like a balance in society. The quincunx, or the inconjunct, or the need to adjust, is the fact that Neptune is like, no, you're going to just jump, you will be inseparable from the ocean. And I think that there is something very powerful here, that if we can transmute this, we will allow ourselves to feel how important it is to approach this, right? But we don't want to drown in the ocean, right? And that's a real risk, to drown into and fully lose ourselves. And that's been happening a lot with Neptune and Pisces. We've talked about this. We've talked about when it went direct, the fog of war was going to get so much thicker, and the fog machine was going to get turned up to 11, and the ability to be consumed, essentially, or to be to just sink into the endless streams of propaganda because there's no boundaries here with Neptune and Pisces in particular, just fully dissolving everything it touches. This implies that there is still a separation between us and the ocean that we're all going to. You don't want to find yourself totally submerged where you don't realize who you are. But there's something also, too, that we have to acknowledge that that's really going to be one of, we have to kind of get in the ocean, right? And the moon in this moment in the quincunx is going to be our opportunity to transmute this energy, or at least to be able to adjust ourselves, that we can't just go to the ocean. I mean, we can, right? But we want to actually get in. And that takes away boundaries completely. And we want to be able to maintain our sense of who we are so that we know who other people are, because that's the whole point of Libra, is that there are the two sides. There's the beach and there's the ocean, right? That's what this represents. And Neptune in Pisces is like, there's a nothing but ocean. It's just ocean everywhere. So, but we want to do more than put our toe in, right? We want to actually allow ourselves the experience of being immersed into the Great Spirit, or the source of all, or to the universe, or our own inspiration, right? We can't do that if we don't allow ourselves a little bit of emotional kind of willingness to step into the water. So that's like right away. That's tonight, even if you look at it, 11 p.m. Or to midnight, right? That it's happening. So after that, the moon comes into its square, its square with Mercury, as we see here. So Mercury is the particular degree that the Mercury is in Capricorn is the degree, actually, this is important. This is actually very important. This is the degree that the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was at in January of 2020, right? The beginning of the end, which, was a transit that was being paid attention to by astrologers for years leading up to it. The beginning of the end. And we know that because it was right after that everything started to transpire out in the surface, or out in our awareness. So this is the degree, though. And the degree, in terms of Sabian symbols, is a soldier receiving 2 awards for bravery in combat. 2 awards. It's a recompense. It's a balancing of accounts. It's the recognition of individual effort by the society for their role in fighting the good fight, or fighting for the community or the collective. This is Mercury coming back and giving us a mental the ability to mentally interface with this particular aspect that really was, like I said, it was the trigger. Well, I wouldn't say it was the trigger. It was a defining moment, the beginning of the end, right? It was solidifying and giving authority to where Pluto was, which is the ultimate balancing of accounts, right? That's what Pluto does. And so Mercury here, we're like mentally engaged with this energy, and then in a square, right, as cardinal square to the moon in Libra still, is that we are feeling this is yet another experience of being in 2 places at once. So while we may be feeling a sense of acknowledging the sunrise, right, that we're feeling and seeing that the sun, there's a new dawn coming, and we want to herald the new dawn, right? We want to give voice to what is coming, and we're going to be feeling that. The square is into our mental realm being way more focused on the ending of things, right? The recompense, the balancing of accounts. So the square is going to be very similar in some ways to the 3rd quarter moon squaring the sun, except it's going to be way more analytical, way more mental, as opposed to the sun, which is way more, but it's still very much the same type of energy where we're feeling like we're feeling a need to pay attention to and give voice to the newness that is coming, the rising of the new earth, whereas our minds are very much working around the all of the things that are, the balancing of accounts, the tying up of loose ends, the giving the awards for bravery, right? The recompense, the giving the individual what it deserves as a result of its work within the community or the collective, right? Ooh. That can go a couple different ways, can it? That's going to be interesting. So then the moon comes, it's going to be squaring all this Capricorn stuff. So then the moon squares Venus in her retrograde. This is all early morning, late in the evening, early morning, that we're going to see these particular moon transits tomorrow. And, Venus is at this degree, 24 to 25 degrees. This is where Pluto has been sitting for months and months and months up until it moved into the next degree. And this is about what allows us to feel comfortable, Venus, because this is the place where we use like cultural and artistic processes to enhance our comfort and appreciation. Like that's the thing about a culture that's advanced and very cohesive with Capricorn, is that we may have eternal values, but they're woven literally into the fabric of our very familiar transactions. And so the Sabian symbol is a store that's filled with these precious rugs. It's the idea that everything has allowed us to get to a point to make these things that are beautiful and artistic and comfortable. And they are woven, like I said, woven into the fabric of our normal everyday transactions. Well, Venus in retrograde, meeting this point, I think will be a little bit kind of like, is this actually well, and Pluto's already been here, right? So it's pulled the thread out of these rugs like entirely, so that you don't even realize there's no rug left when Pluto's done with it. And so Venus now coming back into retrograde is going to be looking very seriously at if this was even, I think she's just going to have to honor, and, what she represents is, taking a sense of, value. Is there value here? Was there value here? Where is the value? And again, it's going to be very introspective, internalizing it, maybe not so much out in the world, but more within ourselves, like really considering this. What these values are, how they were woven into the fabric of our society, if they are still worth weaving into, what can stay, what can go. And this is going to be a very personal experience, I think, for all of us. But the square with the Libra moon at this point is also the tension, I would say, with a feeling that we all have, is the sudden revelation of the mystery of life and death, right? You see an autumn leaf and you realize that it's all, you see the whole thing, right? And this is the mastery level of Libra, is the simultaneous existence in both sides at once as like one spinning disc, or the yin yang, like in motion. And you realize like, this is all a cycle. There's no end and beginning necessarily. It's just a cycle that comes around, but it's through nature or something natural that you come to realize this. And again, the square to this position where Venus is, I think in some ways it'll be tense because it's a square, but this is not new territory. So I think it might actually be a moment of like, yeah, I see the whole picture. And again, turning your setbacks into accomplishments. Venus is going to be, I think it's going to be very thoughtful and maybe difficult for those who have not accepted the fact that Pluto's already destroyed the rug shop. And it's just like, there are no more rugs. And maybe Venus is like, perhaps we can find a way to bring this back into our awareness. But the moon in square to this, I think, is going to be like a revelation, right? Literally a revelation of the whole process, while Venus is trying to like pick up the pieces and possibly like salvage maybe what was maybe that was left. And this square is going to be like, nope, I feel the revelation of the big picture and what it's all about. So that'll actually be really good, I think. And then speaking of revelation of life and death, the moon will then come right into a square with Pluto right after it. So it's just going to be, bang, bang, and then we'll trine Jupiter before moving into Scorpio. So again, it's the same thing. Like we'll start to not only have this revelation, each of us having this personal experience, but then also beginning to feel within ourselves the spinning yin-yang disc. We're like, oh, I can turn these things into one another because I'm in like this cyclical flow, right? And it's the engine turning, or it is the wheel of fortune turning, and the yin and the yang seem to turn into each other as it spins, because that's how it all is. And again, it'll be in a square to Pluto, which is, pulling back the curtain in such a way that is just destroying all of, at this point, it's destroying everything on the surface, so that we're starting to see, the underlying occult energy that is pervasive throughout our entire matrix of reality. And that is some real shit right there, to realize how much of everything we identify as real is the result of, ultimately, what kind of got empowered back in Scorpio. And so when the moon comes into Scorpio, we're going to be feeling this big time. But in the meantime, the square here is our momentary experience of being in the flow of the cycle, and not necessarily getting pulled into the raw and very powerful experience of Pluto. So this is actually these two squares to Venus and Pluto, I think, are actually going to be very useful for us in terms of calibrating our own internal experience, and especially moving forward. Now, the moon is going to come into the last degree of Libra and is going to trine Jupiter in the last degree of Aquarius. And this is just, the conscious totality of being that is represented by Jupiter in the last degree of Aquarius is going to find a lot of traction with our own personal fulfillment and understanding, specifically fulfillment of our own power of understanding, like coming to a full realization at the last degree of Libra, right, is in a philosophical way, and it doesn't matter whatever level you're operating at. That's where what it means to represent. It's kind of like, oh, I get it all now, right? I get it all. And in trying to Jupiter, how Jupiter is, if you get, if you're on board with what Jupiter is, expressing or representing, that was the word I'm looking for, then there is such an understanding that we have the potential to really come to at this moment. And then when the moon slips into Scorpio right after that tomorrow, by the end of today, or end of tomorrow, and then comes into a quincunx with Rahu, this is where the feels of the whole thing will be a lot stronger. That's the thing about the moon in Libra. Yes, we may be wishy-washy, or we may find ourselves constantly shifting our emotions and our feelings in order to find a sense of balance in relation to other. But it's going to be when the moon comes into Scorpio that the intensity of the feeling is that much more. At least Libra allows us to have a little bit of this separation, because it's a mental state, and it's an air sign. But then having the moon in Scorpio, Scorpio people, you know exactly what this is all about, right? This is about the full sinking down into the abyss. And so by the time we get to the end of tomorrow, it's gonna go from a more I would say it's going to go from a more mental place to a fully experiential place emotionally. But the good news is number one, well, I don't know if this is good necessarily, but the quincunx with Uranus and Mars in Sagittarius is a major adjustment right now, because Mars is having us, come back into alignment with our own bodies, right? And the importance of our own bodies. But remember, Mars wants to act. And the world is seen as a laboratory for the soul at this degree of Sagittarius. And there's a reconciliation between our mind and our bodies at this point, 11 degrees Sagittarius. But remember, Mars is going to want to act on this. Mars is going to, almost forcefully kind of reconcile this. And the Uranus is, now that Uranus has moved into the 10 to 11 degrees of Taurus, degrees, is developing the powers of our own mind, and cultivating and caring for it, like watering flowers in our garden. So this quincunx again is going to force us to adjust ourselves, because on the one hand, the awakening process is, at least internally, being experienced now as our determination to give like tangible manifestation of our creative power. And doing it by cultivating it and caring for it like we're watering flowers in the garden of our mind. And Mars is going to be, way more interested in acting out of what his gut, right? Basically, Mars is going to act from his gut and its instinct. And like I said, the return to the body, as opposed to fully objective or fully intellectual, is going to like act on, what's going on in the gut. And again, it's a quincunx. It's not one or the other, but they're not going to fit together. And so that there is especially because these are very different, types of energies, that we have to be very mindful about how we transmute this. And so Mars in Sag has got a lot of fire behind it. And I think that we can utilize that as long as we are not letting it take over, because we want to water the flowers in the garden. We don't want to burn them down or just like, trample all over them. And that can certainly happen with this type of transit. And then let's see, what was the last? And then Jupiter comes into Pisces by the end of tomorrow. You can see it here. Oh, look at that. That's going to be great. It's going to, like I said, it's going to be like a balm, like a soothing salve or something. It's just going to be relief. It's going to be like, you can just, like a drop of water that just finally disperses into the ocean and is just back at one. It's going to be very nice. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So my friends, I think that's plenty of information. I think that that's plenty to go on for today and tomorrow. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested, first of all, let me say thank you to those who have participated in the gift exchange. It really means a lot that you've said such wonderful things and given such feedback about our work together. So I'll be putting those up on my website probably today or tonight. And then this week I'll be checking in with each of you about your free reading. So I'm still going to extend this gift exchange opportunity through the weekend up till the new moon. So if you're interested in that, it's basically if you are so kind as to offer a testimonial or a review of any of the work that even if you haven't gotten a reading from me or any other work, if you're just a regular viewer and you really value this, I would be more than happy to exchange a free reading for that as well. So you can find more information about this particular gift exchange through my social media. So those are both linked in the description box below. And it's the post that is just titled Gift Exchange if you're interested in that, and you get a free reading or energy work session from me. And I really, really appreciate everybody who has participated so far. Besides that, if you're interested in a reading or energetic work to support your process or anything of that nature, you can, everything you need is in the description box below. Link to the website, of course, that has everything that you would need. Social media, my email is all there, or you can just hang out at the end of this video and get more information. And also too, if you value this content and you want me to keep doing it, I would really encourage you to consider subscribe star for $3 a month so that I can continue to give this content out in the way that I am. I really do love doing this, and I don't want to put it behind necessarily a paywall. I want to make it available for people because there are people still searching. There are people that are still looking for guidance, and that's what I'm here to do. So, but supporting it financially allows me to do this or continue to do it. So that's something that I would ask you to consider as well. And so if I move to Twitch, it'll be a lot easier to subscribe through Twitch for the stream. So it's just an idea. But you guys, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. So have a great day. Take care of yourselves and have a great tomorrow as well. And we will be together on Wednesday for the transmission then. Take care, everyone. Bye.